Hey guys, Shelty Phillips here with my May 16th DVD update, where I talk about the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, guys, if you enjoy these updates, definitely give this video a thumbs up. Leave me comments below what you guys thought of the titles I checked out in this update, and any future titles you'd like me to review for future updates, and what some of the things that you guys have picked up recently are. Now, the first one I got from Shout Factory Scream Factory line is a double pack, which has the Food for the Gods and Frogs. Now, out of both of these, the one that I've always been a really big fan of is Frogs. I've watched that movie like a good dozen times when it was on TV. I always watched the DVD. Like, always sort of like slightly obsessed with that movie, mainly because of the one thing I'll talk about in a minute. But Food for the Gods, though, is about this substance that comes out of this ground on this island. This farmer thinks he can use it for like a growth hormone thing. But of course, the animals on the island start eating it and getting into it, and they start mutating and becoming giant. So it's like giant chickens, giant wet rats, giant bugs, and people that come to the island, have to fight these things off and have to try and survive all these giant animals. They made a lot of different kind of like giant animal movies. This, to me, is like one of the earlier ones that I thought was really well done. Just a really fun, silly kind of movie. Both of them, too, have really great new transfers on them. Frogs is about this old man who's like a real crudge-mudgeon. He's always real, like, downbeat and like real negative. When you think of like mean old men, that guy played such a great mean old man. I think he was also in that movie The Thing with Two Heads, which I think is coming out soon. I'm pretty sure about that. But he was always great. But he's having his birthday party, invites his whole family to come and to the party. And they all get there, and then, of course, there's like something going on out there, and these like frogs coming all over the place, and people are dying off and disappearing. It's like also snakes and other things, but it's not like giant frogs or anything. It's just like all these different random frogs, like all over the place. It's like one of those movies. It's like, how did they do this with these frogs everywhere, coming after people, killing them? And of course, the old man, when this is all going wrong, getting everywhere, he doesn't want to leave. Kind of reminds me of this movie of Frogs of Squirm a little bit, but the frogs are everywhere. He won't leave. He just wants to stay there, stay put. So some people have to stay around with him, and that's pretty much what it is. But they're really, really fun movies. Highly recommend checking these out. Both of them have, Food for the God has new interviews and an audio commentary with the director, and there's also a new interview with the actress from Frogs. But really, really fun, silly B movies. Definitely check these out. Another double pack from Scream Factory as well is Empire of the Ants and Jaws of Satan. And Jaws of Satan, is about a killer snake, and it was actually Christina Applegate's first movie. And I never even knew. I feel like this is probably the only horror movie I can think of that Christina Applegate was ever in. But this is like one of her first ever anything. I think it was the first everything she did. This is before Married with Children, because this was in Jaws of Satan was the first one she was in. And that was, what year was that? That was 81. So it was a number of years before Married with Children. Empire of the Ants is basically about this woman who's trying to sell properties to people, like kind of like those Florida kind of things, like crappy like land. There used to be commercials on TV of people trying to sell these kind of pieces of land. Go, oh, buy this part of the island and buy this thing, and that's what she's trying to do, is trying to sell this part of the land. But there's something going on there, and there's something's, the toxic chemical thing has fallen into this area, and basically making all the things, kind of just like with Food for the Gods, get giant, and the people who come there, have to try and fight off these things and try and get off of this island and figure out what they're going to do, because they're all dropped off there in this terrible property in the middle of nothing. Jaws of Satan, though, is this basically a snake that's on a train that ends up getting loose, and it's basically, other snakes are coming too, but if you get bit by this snake, these weird things start happening to people, and they start like having these weird signs. They die these terrible deaths, and it's about like the cops trying to investigate it with the morgue and things like that, and trying to figure out what is going on and what these things are. And I actually liked it. It was a really fun one. Like I said, it was cool to see Christina Applegate in her first movie, and both of these are ones I had never seen before. Empire of the Ants, comparing that to Food for the Gods, was a little bit more like early kind of green screen kind of effects, and they were putting the creatures in and things like that. But this one here, the main feature on this is on the Empire of the Ants. Empire of the Ants has a commentary with the director. But both of these are really fun, double pack movies. The next one from Scream Factory as well is Stigmata. This is one of those ones I hadn't seen in years. It was from 1999. Around the time they made a couple different movies like this, kind of like possession or satanic kind of things. They did like End of Days. There was one they did with, a Johnny Depp one, but I know there's a couple different ones around this time. This one, though, is basically about Gabriel Byrne, who goes around and he's like a priest who goes and investigates kind of occurrences like religious occurrences when people, saw, like, just an example, not in this movie, but people saw, like, Jesus on a piece of toast and, on the side of a building. That was one that he was investigating. Or, like, statues that are crying blood and things like that. I'm not religious, so I don't know all that kind of stuff, but that kind of stuff that he goes and investigates. But, in the beginning of the movie, the beginning of the movie had a creepy sequence to it. This guy, like the one who was dead in the coffin, but he goes there to investigate this crying statue in I think it was in Italy, and then he goes and tells the other priests and things like that he believes that it might be something real, that he doesn't know how it was done, if it was faked. But then he ends up hearing about this woman played by Patricia Arquette, who is showing the signs of the stigmata, meaning she's getting like the signs of like the cross on, of like the being nailed to the cross on her hands and whips on her back, and she's like having all these kind of things happening to her. So he goes to kind of investigate and find this woman. And normally people who have the signs of the stigmata are like very religious people, and she's not religious at all. So he can't figure out what's going on, and because normally, like, he's seen it's just people who have been crazy and doing this to themselves, but he can't see signs of this, and he's seeing things happening to her, and he doesn't understand it. It's that kind of him trying to figure out what it is. Has on here, audio commentary, and some making ofs as well, and some interviews on here, and a music video, and deleted scenes. But I thought this was a pretty cool movie. Like I said, had not seen this in a long time. Definitely has like a real like late '90s feel, with the music and the editing to it. The next one from Warner Brothers is one that people have talked about a lot. I didn't get to see this in theaters, and it was a Clint Eastwood film, American Sniper. It did really, really well at the box office. I thought this movie was okay. To me, it wasn't my favorite of Clint Eastwood's movies. And it also wasn't my favorite of, like, movies about, war stories and similar kind of stories about people going to war, like, The Hurt Locker and some other ones like that. And, like, Jarhead, I kind of like more. This is a true story, though, about Bradley Cooper's character. I'm not going to talk about the ending because, people know what happened to the guy in real life. But, Bradley Cooper did a really good job in this, really bulked up for this part. But he's a guy who was a little older and wanted to kind of do something different with his life and decided to go to war and, to be a sniper. And it's kind of about his story. It's also involved dealing with him when because he keeps going back, because he can't, since he knows the wars are going on, because he wanted to do this right after 9/11, he can't be home, when he knows that the war is still going on. So he continuously has to keep going back. But it also deals with what happens when he gets back, and then, But it didn't, I kind of thought, like, at one point when he was back near the end, they didn't explore as much of that as I thought, because it was really interesting, the stuff with him, with the Wounded Warriors, and that kind of stuff. I thought that was where the movie really was, like, different, and it was, like, wanted to explore more with that a little bit, and it wasn't as much with that. Like I said, I didn't absolutely love this movie at all. I didn't think it was the best executed movie, but I can see a lot of people would like it. But to me, I just didn't absolutely love this. But it has on here a documentary, about the story with Clint Eastwood. But it was very well acted and everything. It's one definitely I would say to check out, but not absolutely amazing. At least just not to me. I didn't think it was like the best, as a movie. The next one from Universal, and this is another one. This wasn't a very good movie at all, but I kind of like that because of that. And it's the movie called The Loft. Like I said, though, this isn't a good movie, but that's what made it good. Especially some of the acting in it was sort of strange, like kind of like silly a little bit. But it's basically about these guys who, really, want to kind of cheat on their wives, and so they end up, one of them, they all kind of pitching their money together and getting this loft. And really, the only reason for this loft is to bring women there to sleep with them. So it's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of gross, though, because it's like, I certainly hope they were changing the sheets and keeping things washed, because it was like, they were all getting things done on the same mattress. When you really think about it, it's kind of like, ew. I don't know, but Cam from Modern Family was in this, and his acting, he still got like a sore thumb in this. Like, just the way he was acting was so strange, and he was like so over the top with some of it. But like I said, this is like one of those movies that, to me, will live on as being bad, but fun bad. You know what I mean? I think everyone even knew it was like that, making it. At least you could kind of tell. But, basically, though, the one day that one of them goes back to the loft, they end up finding that there's a person dead in the loft. this woman, tied up and everything, and they're trying to figure out exactly what happened. So they're all like, they kind of know that one of them had to have done it. They're also thinking, could it have been one of the past women they were with, taking revenge or something like that. So it's kind of like them trying to figure out what it is and like flashing back to things. Like I said though, I really like this. I really did. But like I said, it's not a great movie at all. But that's what made it kind of exciting. The next one, Universal as well, is like the kind of a thriller movie with Chris Hemsworth, Black Hat. Michael Mann directed this. Did Heat and Collateral. This wasn't very good. I kind of wanted to like this movie, but I didn't. But it's kind of about, I got very bored with this, to be honest. It was basically, though, about Chris Hemsworth. I'm a fan of his other movies like Rush and, the Avengers and things like that. But this, though, he's basically, though, was a hacker that was in jail. And, this coding that he had written, another group of these hackers were using it, so they end up making a deal, to let him out of jail if he kind of helps them track down, figure out who these people are that are doing all these problems and causing explosions and this nuclear power thing to go off. So it's kind of about him getting back together with his old team of hackers and things like that. But it kind of is slow, and it's really pretty long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes. It just moves very slow. It has on here, though, on location, thing about where they shot it. It's definitely shot around a lot of different places and stuff like that. Some people might like this, but like I said, it just plays off very slow. And the next one from Arrow US, one of the new Arrow US releases, which I keep on saying, but I'm so excited they're out here, doing US releases now, is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Osborne, which is a really, really cool, weird one that I've never heard of. The director of this one directed the movie The Beast, which was a really weird film that I really liked. Hopefully down the line it gets like a Blu-ray release. But this movie is basically a weird take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And it's Udo Kier, and it's basically about playing Dr. Jekyll. And it's people together for this party. In the beginning of the movie, you see this girl getting attacked by some figure, and it's basically just the people at this party all in one night. They're all together, these other doctors, and they're kind of like arguing with each other about Dr. Jekyll's theories on experimenting and on bodies, and his kind of take on science, and that they don't believe what he says, and they think what he's doing is immoral and things like that. And that night, though, people start getting killed off one by one by Dr. Jekyll's alternate personality, the Osborne, or with Dr. I think that was how you said it. I don't think that was exactly what it was, but it was his alternate personality. I don't know if they ever said his name, the alternate personality, but the alternate personality, and the transformation scene of it is amazing. It's like all in water, and like the way that he transforms. And it's also a different actor playing him. The actor who plays him is the one guy who was like one of the killers in that movie Faceless, which I always loved that movie. And he was really freaky looking in this movie. Like the way he looks, he had this kind of weird haircut that they had him in. And he was like sort of less bulked up, I think, than he was in Faceless. I think that was before he started like really, because in that one he like had a real different look. Because in this one he seemed a little smaller. I guess because they wanted him to look more like he could have been Udo Kier. What's kind of funny, it's always weird too when you see a movie too, when they have the dubbed one, and you never get to hear like a dub by Udo Kier, because that was like kind of how they always did it back then. But it has a new 2K transfer on this, a ton of different features on here, new interviews, some shorts on here, and then some documentaries about the movies of this time, but a new interview with Udo Kier about this film. And you could tell that he really liked this movie and really wanted to work with this director. And I think he worked with him, they were saying, on another movie as well, which I have to check out. But on here too, it's got a booklet about the movie. The reversible cover on this one, though, is, I believe it's the same image, though, in there this time. But it has, a booklet about the movie, and some pictures and things like that. Can't show that one. But a bunch of different, it was a really cool, some weird sequences too. And also, if you know Beast, it has some of that kind of really weird stuff that Beast had. But a really, really cool one. The next one from Vinegar Syndrome is one I was really excited, that was coming out to Blu-ray. They have a bunch of stuff coming out. One I'm really excited to see, because I never really had seen much about it. It was like, I think it's Frightmare or Fright World or something like that. But this one is Madman. And this one, I think there was like a code red release of this that got was only out for a little while. And like some of the features from that have been ported over, because it has on here Victor Bonacore, who I, did his movie years back called Blood Wings, which hopefully down the line gets released. But, he did a documentary on here, 30 Years of Mad Men, which is a 90-minute documentary, and a bunch of different, interviews on here. And then, the Mad Men 30 Years continues, and I know they want to do like a remake kind of to the movie. But the movie, it's a different kind of movie because it starts off differently than a lot of other movies. It starts off like right away with a group of these campers out in the woods and, telling, scary stories, and they tell the story of Madman Mars, who, lives out in these woods and kills people and what he does and things like that. And then the campers go back to leave to go to camp, and then Madman Mars comes after them one by one. And the actress from this, too, that I forgot that she was in this, was the one main actress in Dawn of the Dead. This, to me, was a really cool movie. I kind of always wished that it had more of a setup in the beginning, kind of showed like the camp stuff like in the day, and kind of like, just a little, like at least 10 minutes of like camping stuff, just to kind of set it up a little bit more, because it kind of seemed like you could tell they only had a certain amount of people to be in the camp, because it almost to me sort of seemed like a camp that was done in the middle of the winter, because it was actually filmed in winter but set in the summer. But great new transfer on this. My favorite sequence in this whole movie, though, is the one scene with the Madman Mars in the trees. I think to me that might be one of like the greatest shots in horror history, like one of the top, because there's something about that, the way it was and the way it, like, he was looking in the trees, was like really creepy. So I would definitely check this one out. Like I said, a great new transfer on this. The next one from Lionsgate is Cut Bank. And this is one of those ones that I went into it like not knowing if I was going to like this, and then actually really liked this one. And like it was kind of a shame that like it didn't go to theaters or anything, because it was actually really pretty cool. But the movie's basically one of those movies about like a lot of like scheming going on, a lot of people with a lot of schemes. But it's Liam Hemsworth and Teresa Palmer, Billy Bob Thornton, Bruce Dern, and John Malkovich. And it's basically, I'm not spoiling anything because you find out within the first like 10 minutes what was going on. But in the beginning of the movie, you see, that Liam Hemsworth's character is talking to his girlfriend, talking about how they really want to leave and get out of this town. They don't know how they're doing this. And then she's like filming this kind of like audition tape. Then in the background, you see the mail truck go by, and this guy get out of their car, shoot Bruce Dern, who's the mailman. And Bruce Dern was amazing in this movie. In the beginning of the movie, he's kind of like playing like the pervy mailman, spying on people, in the field across the street. He was great in this. He was my favorite thing in the movie. But, he was basically, though, you see him getting killed, but you find out, like, right afterwards that the whole thing was a big setup, and the person that kills him works with Liam Hemsworth, and they were planning it to basically get the money from the mail department, because, like, if you have footage or anything leading to the arrest of someone from the mail, people getting killed, you get all this money, and that's kind of like his way to get out of the town. But then it becomes this huge issue about the people investigating the murder and, the supposed murder, and trying to find the body and trying to figure. Then things start going wrong, and then there's also this guy through the whole movie who is looking for his package that was not delivered because the mailman was killed and all the package stuff was put somewhere, and he's kind of trying to trace the steps of where this important package that he needs, and the whole movie you're trying to wonder, what is this thing? Like I said, I really, really like this movie. It was like an interesting thing. You were trying to kind of figure out what was going to happen to it. I would check this out. Like I said, I was really surprised with how much I liked that. The next one is an Alexis Vega movie, Roommate Wanted. And this is kind of like a dark comedy kind of movie. It kind of is pitched more like a thriller, but way more of like a dark comedy. And it's basically, though, about these two roommates that are living together, and they're kind of like polar opposites. And I'm thinking they hadn't been together too long. They didn't set that up that much, though, about how long they had lived together. But, Alexis Vega's character is, putting everything into trying to get this scholarship to school, so she can continue education. But things don't go well. She gets the scholarship, but it's only going to cover 50% because the school is not doing very well financially, so that's about all they can handle. And she finds out from her friend, the roommate, about selling her eggs, and that would cover the money to this like donor that that would need the money and who would pay big money for it. But then it turns out that both of them try out to get this money, and then they start going crazy on each other and fighting, and then it's kind of like trying to sabotage things and bad things happening. And I mean, I thought that Alexa Vega was great. I thought that she was really good in this. I thought the other actress in it played opposite her just wasn't as strong as her. She wasn't bad or anything, just couldn't play it as good as she could. But I really like this movie. I do feel though like at the end, it just kind of like the way it ends is kind of like I kind of wish it did it a little differently because it just got a little silly just a little bit the way it ended. But I would highly recommend checking that out. It was just a really fun movie. The next one from Lionsgate as well is Nightlight. 5 friends, 1 game, 0 chance of survival. And this is, I think they made another movie about these woods as well, as far as I remember, that I talked about a couple months back. But it's about this area of woods where people always commit suicide and things like that have happened out in these woods. And it's around a group of these friends that hear about a classmate of theirs that ended up killing themselves out in this woods. So they end up wanting to go out to these woods and kind of, it's like a found footage thing of them going out there, kind of screwing around, messing around. It's with their flashlights and things like that. So it's got kind of a Blair Witch vibe because they go out there and then bad things start happening to them one by one, and you're wondering, what is this? Is this something out in the woods? Is this some kind of a supernatural thing? What is going on? And kind of things, they kind of have like fears happening to them. And I like this movie. I thought it was just like a fun, a little bit different of a found footage take on these kind of movies. And to me, I would definitely recommend checking this one out, though. It's just a cool one. It has on here a commentary with the director and then some behind the scenes and deleted and alternate ending on the movie as well. But definitely check this one out. Like I said, I think there was another movie made about these kind of woods and what happens in them. But I would highly recommend this one. The next one from Anchor Bay is My Life, directed by Nicholas Wedding Refn. And it's, Nicholas, Refn's wife directed this. And it's basically a documentary following the making of his film Only God Forgives, which I really like that movie. I know it kind of got like some kind of mixed opinions, but I felt like one of those movies when you thought about it, you really liked it a lot more. But this is, when he was in Bangkok, kind of like the making of, and they were there for like 6 months, and it kind of shows, him kind of upset about things, and his opinion about the movie at the end, and that's basically what it is. It's just kind of him there, filming on set. There was some cool stuff with Ryan Gosling and stuff, and some behind-the-scenes stuff. I like this movie, though. Like, if you're interested in documentaries, you're interested in, behind-the-scenes kind of things of making them, I would check this out. I really thought there was a great, character piece on him, and hopefully, the new movie he's doing as well. I would love to see more, behind-the-scenes like this. I mean, it does have kind of more of a feel like a behind-the-scenes feature on the Blu-ray or DVD or something like that. But I don't know. I like this. I thought it was just a cool behind-the-scenes kind of thing. The next one from Sony, and this was actually a Byrne on demand release. It's funny. There's no actual physical release, but this is Rec 4 Apocalypse. And this is basically picks up after the first movie about basically the woman who is the newscaster, and then this one she's put into like quarantine on this ship, and there's other people from like other quarantine areas put in this ship as well, like the one old woman. It's not the same woman, but she's supposed to be technically from that, from the third one at the wedding scene. But basically, though, she's a carrier for the thing, and people start getting affected by zombies on the ship, and start turning, and it's kind of like the people on the ship getting attacked and things like that, trying to figure out how they're going to survive and how they're going to get off the ship. And I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think, like, I was one of those kind of few people who actually really, really liked the third movie. I know it had like a lot of like really mixed opinions, but this one though is not found footage, so it's not done at all. There's none whatsoever of this found footage. So it is a different take, because the third movie was like found footage for like the first half, then it was all regular movie. This one though is 100% non-found footage, so it was actually a different take to see when these films all done not like that. But it has on here too a making of Rec 4. And the next two from Severin Films are two Jess Franco films. She Killed in Ecstasy and Vampiros Lesbos. She Killed in Ecstasy, though, is basically, though, about a woman whose husband ends up killing himself because, he's like a doctor. He's going to tell them about his theories of, researching on human embryos and things like that, and the other board hates this and basically turns down what he says, so he ends up killing himself, and she's basically going and seducing the people that were made, responsible for him killing himself one by one and killing them, all these terrible deaths. It's a really, really cool one. Jess Franco also directed the one I talked about earlier, Faceless. Always really like his movie. And this one has on here, interviews with Jess Franco, interviews with some of the other cast members, an early, documentary on here, the trailer, and also has on here a CD with music from the movie She Had Killed on Ecstasy and The Devil Came from, I don't know how to say that one, Ascaneva. But the other one, Vampire as Lesbos, is about a vampire who's trying to seduce this woman, basically seduces women and brings them back to her villa castle kind of place to feast on their blood. Which this one woman who ends up getting seduced, gets taken in there and ends up waking up in the loony bin and then the nut house, and then starts kind of seeing visions of this woman, and weird things start happening to her, and odd stuff's happening. Both of these ones have really, really good transfers, and if you know his kind of erotic films, you know these films. It has on this one as well interviews and the trailer and an alternate title sequence. It also has a alternate Spanish language bootleg version of the movie with subtitles. But both, like I said, really great transfers on these movies. Really cool, weird ones. I thought I'd never seen these before, but I had actually seen this one years and years back. The next one from Called Epics is Stay As You Are, which is one of the early Natasha Kinski movies. This is one of my favorite ones of this update. This isn't a movie though that everyone's going to love, though, but it's it's not everyone's got a cup of tea movie. But always a fan of Natasha Kinski, and this is like what I said, one of her really, really early movies. This is basically though about this guy who ends up falling in love with Natasha Kinski, who's way younger than him. She's supposed to be 18 or 19, and he's supposed to be in his 50s. But he ends up kind of discovering from one of the people that in the town where he meets this girl, that he ends up figuring out that maybe he might actually be her father. And it's a really big situation because the mother is dead, so he can't find her and track her down to talk to her. And it's kind of like he's having to resist sleeping with her because he's kind of would be incest, and he's kind of worried about the whole thing, but she keeps on kind of not figuring out why he's acting this way, because at first he was all into her, and then he's not because he's discovered that he might be the father. And it's kind of about what ends up happening, or if he does end up getting with her. And it also to me has some great vibe of tragic kind of stuff, especially the end too, with what ends up happening compared to a story that was told earlier in the movie. I don't know, I really like this movie. I thought this was a really cool one that I had never seen before, and, this one I would definitely recommend checking out. Just a really cool, different movie. Kind of has a vibe of that movie, Home Before Midnight, a little bit. It wasn't at all the same story, but just had a slight, similar kind of vibe to it. Definitely check this one out, though, especially if you're a Natasha Kinski fan. The next one from Olive Films is Ski School. I covered the bikini butt so no one said anything, because people say something about everything, it seems. But it's basically, though, one I had never seen in my life. And for some reason, I don't know how I haven't seen this. It's kind of like a Meatballs kind of movie. Really good transfer in this, but it's about the preppies and the kind of stonery kind of types that are on this mountain, and they kind of have a real arguments with each other, and the preppies are always trying to say, oh, the stoner ones, you're going to get kicked off of this ski slope and you're gone. And there's also a contest going on between who is the winner of it. So it kind of takes from Revenge of the Nerds a little bit with the contest at the end. But the two main guys are the stoner types, are the ones who were together in summer school. So it's kind of cool to see them together in another movie. I believe they made a sequel to this movie as well. I had never seen that. But this is kind of a fun one about the arguments between them and the weird things that happen, to get there. And them pulling, the one pulling pranks on each other. And that's pretty much what it is, though, is them trying to win to the stoner groups to try and stay on this island. Stay on the mountain. The next one is Uwe Ball movie, which I thought I never watched before, and then I was oh, I've watched this before, because I remember Clint Howard's part in this. But it's called Heart of America, and it's basically though about these two guys that are planning on killing the people at the school who were harassing them, because they were beating them up. It's kind of based slightly on the Columbine story, but it's kind of about them what they're planning to do. So it kind of follows the people that are going to be involved in this, that day. And it's kind of about one person that's pregnant, and then one, it's, the boyfriend is basically talking about how, he was cheating on her the whole time and kind of telling the truth about things. And it kind of like follows all these different people. Clint Howard was great in this, though, as the one's father is going, if you're not going to school, you're going to get a goddamn job. You're going to work your keep around here. And it's like, I don't know, I just loved him in it. Clint Howard is always great. And Clint Howard as a father is always cool. I don't know, I like this movie. It had like a real like 2002 feel to it. It was like, and I don't think not many people had probably seen this movie. And it was actually pretty different for Uwe Ball, and was actually, I thought, pretty well directed. I mean, it kind of really was only like a couple different sequences when you really think about it, because it was kind of like people in the one setting, people in another setting, people in another setting. So it was kind of like just sort of like kind of a small kind of movie because it really didn't have a whole lot happening. But I did like it. The next one from Olive Films as well is Yellowbeard, which is another one I had not seen. Really good transfer this as well, but it has a whole bunch of people, pretty much everyone from Monty Python group in this. But it's basically just like a silly kind of spoof of pirate movies, and it's like about this pirate Yellowbeard, and there's always this weird stuff happening because Beard's like on fire, really weird, and he's like really scraggly. And the one actor in this, though, Peter. I think it was, I don't know, one of the actors, though, actually passed away making this movie. I think it was Marty Feldman, who was always really cool, but he always was popping his eyes out in movies. But he actually died making this movie. So it was pretty sad, though, that it was like his last movie. But, all the Monty Python people kind of play supporting parts, and Cheech and Chong are actually in this as pirates, and they were actually pretty funny in this. But it's just a funny, weird movie about this, like, weird pirate and them people trying to let the pirate out of jail to try and take them to his treasure, and kind of like the adventure and things like that. But I like this movie. It's just like a fun, weird, like, kind of pirate spoof movie. The next one I wanted to talk about, because I actually have a little cameo in this one, and this is Camp Massacre, and it's got Brie Olson in this, Al Snow, Scott Tipton from, Ghost Hunters International, but it's basically about a group of these people who all go to a weight loss retreat camp, to go on this reality show, filming them, trying to lose weight, kind of like a Biggest Loser kind of thing, but when they're there, someone is going and killing them all off. And I have a little cameo in this one is like Bottomless Ray, the guy who's like promoting this all-you-can-eat buffet. So this is, before I lost weight. But, I like this movie a lot. It's just like a really, really fun kind of slasher movie about people getting killed off in this camp. And if you like that kind of thing, I would check this out. Like I said, I don't always like to talk about stuff that I had anything in to kind of actually review it or anything. But to me, I actually thought this was a really fun movie. The next one, put a thing on the top so no one says anything about the bikini, because, or in the gore on it. But it's Die Delta Pi. I actually got this from the director because I really wanted to see this movie. And it's basically, though, a kind of a throwback movie about, in the beginning of this movie, you see this girl with sorority end up getting killed in this fire, and then someone, is going around killing them. In the beginning of the movie, too, I loved, like, the kind of person who was like the den mother of the sorority, or the fraternity house, because they're going, that's one butt ugly woman. There's like just some really funny, silly lines in this movie, but it's years later, and all the people in that sorority are like older now, and the one is a cop, and people start getting killed off in this campus again, and she's kind of trying to investigate and see if it's like any connection to in the beginning of the movie when people were getting killed off. Just a fun throwback slasher movie. Like I said, it's one of those movies that has a lot of really funny, silly stuff in it that I really liked. But definitely check this out. I'll put a link below or wherever you can get this one. But I really like this movie. I had a really good time watching this. The next one from Arc Entertainment is Private Number, and this has Judd Nelson and Tom Sizemore in this. But it's about this guy who's a writer trying to write his new book, and is having a really tough time doing it. And his wife is also he's getting real stressed because his wife really wants to have a baby. She's getting older and she doesn't want to keep going without having a child, and he's all kind of against it. And then they start getting these weird telephone calls at night, every night around the same time, and the person hangs up, or he hears like these weird voices, and he's also starting to kind of crack up a little bit and seeing like these figures, and he starts to realize that these people might have died, and he sort of wants to try and investigate and figure out what exactly is going on. And that's pretty much what it is him trying to figure out what all this means and why everything's going on. And he also is trying to keep from drinking, because he said, he was a recovering alcoholic. He was actually having weird stuff like this happen to him when he was actually drinking. And, Tom Sizemore's there trying to help him keep from drinking. But I actually kind of like this. The next one from Inception Media is Bordering on Bad Behavior. And this is kind of like a different take on, like, movies when it's about, like, people, like, that are, Arabs and things like that, together, like, in Muslim territory and things like that, not getting along, and they end up getting, Tom Sizemore and these other guys end up getting locked together in this room and have to spend time together. And it's kind of like more of a comedy take on the whole thing. Because, like, people that are really different religious beliefs and different opinions on things actually trying to get along together, and they're kind of like poking fun at each other, making jokes, and, it's kind of like, are they going to become friends and change their opinions about each other and things like that. That's essentially what it is. But I thought it was well acted. I mean, they were all, Tom Sizemore was in a lot of the movie and everything, and pretty much the star of it, just like them in this kind of thing, locked in, and that's pretty much what it is. It's just what they're doing in there all this time when they're together, and I actually kind of like this one. It was because, like I said, it kind of took on like a different kind of comedic take to the whole situation. The next one from Image is Infected. And this is like, it was kind of pretty cool. It was like, it was a different kind of group of like infected people. It was like a bunch of younger kids, like teenagers and stuff that are together. And, there's like an infection that happens and they're all together and they start like trying to survive. And, but it's basically though, like a pandemic thing, it's coming out and I watch so many movies, I'm trying to remember everything. But basically though, there's an infection with the zombies going on. And they're trying to survive, and they're going around. It kind of takes like a Walking Dead kind of vibe, because there's stuff of them too, hiding out in the school and finding, little by little other groups of survivors. And a lot of it takes place in a school, though. So it's always kind of cool, like different settings and stuff, and cool to see like kind of like back kind of areas of Europe and England and places like that. Like, I guess like sort of like, I think they might have filmed like Under the Skin in some of these areas. But like kind of small little roads and stuff like that. So it was kind of a cool, different take. Like I said, it was about a younger group of people. The next one from Accelerated Media is Strange Blood. And it kind of has like a vibe of like Reanimator and one of those kind of things, and Splice and things like that. So the doctor is an assistant. He's kind of trying to invent this kind of weird creature thing that can kind of cure everything, cure cancer, cure all the diseases. But the one day he's in there trying to like experiment on it, he puts this injection into his hand, these like spikes, and he starts to kind of transform and getting weird and coughing up blood, and real gross things start to happen to him. And that's pretty much what it is. It's like, showing how when you mess with things you really shouldn't be, bad things can start to happen to him. And like I said, it has like the vibe of like a Reanimator and Splice and kind of like Lazarus Effect kind of thing. That kind of a take on it. I thought it was well acted and some pretty cool like effects and stuff in this one. And it kind of has like that, old school, like I said, vibe to it. And that is, Strange Blood. The next one is from Wild Eye. And this was a really fun, silly, like cheesy movie, which I really like this. And this is, Raiders of the Lost Shark. And, this one of those movies that you, like, it's like purposely, sort of silly. And that's kind of what made it cool. And it's pretty much all about this, like, this genetic shark that ends up, like, escaping out into this lake. And the beginning of the movie was my favorite because it was kind of like, almost like the guys from the Sonic commercials. Like, the guys kind of look a little bit like them, out there with these women. And the one gets up getting killed in the lake because the shark ends up killing him out there. It was kind of, this movie was kind of like the movie that I was in, Ghost Shark, but like a micro budget version of that. You know what I mean? That's sort of what it was. But it was basically to go out there and get, killed off there, and then it's other people that come to the island and, sneak in and getting killed, and it's really silly deaths and stuff like that. I don't know. I really like this one. It's just like a silly thing, and the people trying to investigate it, and the acting was awful. But that's what made it good. Like, I loved that the acting was bad in it. Like, if it was good, the movie wouldn't have been good. And there was a couple scenes where they were like shooting in like a building that looked like almost like a hotel, and I was thinking like, did they have permission? Did they just shut the camera and film it in there? I don't know. If you really want to see like a really fun, silly, cheesy, like weirdly acted shark movie, watch this. Like I said, I really loved it. The next one is American Poltergeist, and this is like about, from Wild Eye as well, and about a group of people that are kind of, ghost hunters, and they're trying to do a show about ghost hunting, and they're having no luck with it, and they're never seeing anything. And the one day when they get to this house, the one guy kind of calls out and says, oh, come here, spirits, and, do this. And basically by doing that, he ends up inviting the spirits in, and then they end up coming home with them, and they all start kind of having bad things happen to them one by one. It has on here, though, a director's commentary, a behind-the-scenes featurette, and previews. It was an okay one. Like I said, it couldn't compete to Raiders of the Lost Shark. Raiders of the Lost Shark was amazing. One of my favorite Wild Eye releases in a long time. And the last one I got from Midnight Releasing is American Backwards, Slew, Hampshire. And this was actually pretty well made. The one of the cast members in this has been in a lot of different movies. He was like the first Hunger Games and Endless Love and a bunch of different things. But this is about a group of these people that want to get together for this kind of ritual thing about like wanting to go out there and hunt this thing out into the woods, and they meet these weird kind of hunters with them, and kind of like them with the hunt of whatever this creature is out in the woods, and bad things start happening and people start dying off. And I actually thought it was actually pretty well made. The beginning of the movie, though, had some weird kind of quick cutting. They kind of dropped that near the end. It was like cutting really fast. Like, why are they cutting it so fast? Like, it was like I was like, ooh, stop that. But other than that, I mean, I thought it really picked up after. And it has on here a gag reel and a commentary as well. So anyway, though, guys, that's all for this DVD Blu-ray update. Like I said, if you enjoy these updates, definitely give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys later.